Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm Brett Davis. Joining me today is the Center Square's Western Washington reporter, Spencer Pauly. You recently authored a piece headlined, Proposed Rent Control Trigger Law Shot Down by Seattle City Council. So City Council members voted down a measure that would have acted as a trigger law to institute rent control in Seattle, pending changes to the state's restrictions on those kind of laws. It was sponsored by Kshama Sawant. Can you tell us a little bit about what went down?
Sure. So in this vote on this proposed ordinance of Sawant's, over an hour of public comment was held, where you had some commenters saying their opinions. Some called out certain city council members, asking them to pass this rent control bill. And then even some chants were being shouted, including, "Dump the elephant, dump the ass. We need a party for the working class." So a lot of people were making their opinions heard. Sawant even acknowledged that chant as she spoke about the ordinance.
Now, I understand that the part of the controversy about this law had to do with the fact that Washington State has prohibited cities from implementing rent control policy since 1981. So even if they did pass this, what were they thinking? How is this going to work given state law?
So Sawant and a lot of the public commenters that spoke on this in favor of this proposed ordinance said they knew that this is not going to go into effect if passed, but it signals to the state legislature that, the city of Seattle wants rent control. Spoke to Sean Flynn of the Rental Housing Association of Washington late July, and he told me that every year Democrats within the Washington state legislature propose rent control bills, and they always get shot down. In 2022 alone, there were 6 proposals, and they were all shot down as well.
Now, this isn't Kshama Sawant's first time proposing this. As my understanding, she's proposed similar legislation back in 2019 and 2021, and it didn't go anywhere then, and it hasn't gone anywhere now.
Yeah, so there have been 10 attempts within the city of Seattle at implementing rent control ordinances into Seattle law. 4 that made it out to a full council were passed. This includes a resolution supporting the lifting and preemption of rent control, a resolution regulating rent increases on properties that do not meet basic maintenance standards. And there were 2 that were temporarily restrictions on increasing commercial rents. This was probably around the time of the COVID-19 pandemic, when all bets were kind of off and a lot of actions were made to kind of just provide some relief for tenants and rental providers.
I didn't know there were 10 attempts. I didn't realize there were that many.
Yeah, and that's Seattle City Council Chair Deborah Juarez mentioned this prior to her voting no on this. A lot of council members said that just, it's a trigger law, so it just does not have any effect. Therefore, it's just not worth putting out there. And they also felt that Sawant was calling them out specifically, which was what they considered kind of unprofessional and not something to be done by a council member. But it was quite a scene.
Yeah, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but do you think if there weren't any such state law, do you think it would have passed?
That's where it's kind of hard to say. I think a lot of council members spoke that they think that rent control is something that is intriguing. They have seen it being done in New York, San Francisco, and St. Paul, in Minnesota. However, there has been some evidence that, supply goes down when you install rent control, right? Because once landlords move out because they're not making any money off of it, rent control, they say that rent increases due to operating costs, and that usually goes over the rate of inflation, which is what this cap would have installed.
Right. I would assume the people that are in rent control apartments would be incentivized not to leave.
Exactly.
That would lower the available amount of housing. So
if you found an apartment at a good deal, it's hard to go to somewhere where you're getting about the same amount of space and paying maybe $400 more a month, which is what a lot of people in Seattle are kind of experiencing. So if you install rent control, people are going to have to be moved to areas where there's not rent control installed. And then you're going to see a huge supply drop in housing. It's just a lot at stake here.
Probably the law of unintended consequences in action. Well, this looks to be maybe Kshama Sawant's last big attempt at legislation like this since she's leaving office at the end of this year.
Seems like she's going out with a bang here.
That's right. So look forward to see how this plays out in the future, if they try this again or whatnot. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Spencer Pauly, this is Brett Davis. Please subscribe, and thanks for listening.